It is absolutely crucial to confront problems as early as possible, to prevent them from escalating into even greater issues later in life. Everyone thought Princess Charlotte would one day wear her Grandma Diana's sparkling jewels. But now those treasures are gone, and Queen Camilla has them. When Kate Middleton found out, she was truly shocked, hurt, and angry. At this moment, she knows Diana's memory must be protected. So Kate does the unthinkable by confronting Camilla face to face. What happened next stunned everyone. Join us as we uncover this royal drama that stands as a threat to Diana's legacy. Uncovering a secret movement. No one had any idea what was really going on until Kate stumbled upon a small folder. Hidden inside it was a secret no one expected. This secret was a betrayal quietly tucked away in official-looking papers. And it all started with something as simple as a necklace, a piece of royal jewelry that was supposed to be handed down to young Charlotte. Kate was only meant to be going through the royal records, a normal, quiet job tied to tradition. It was part of her duty, something that involved passing on special heirlooms from one future queen to the next. But what she uncovered wasn't a graceful piece of history. It was a quiet act of sabotage. Inside the folder were papers that completely changed what Kate thought she knew. They weren't just about tradition or inheritance. They revealed that certain royal items, including the necklace meant for Charlotte, were secretly being given to someone else, and not just any royal relative. These treasures were being redirected to someone entirely outside of the direct royal line, Camilla's granddaughter. That small collection of documents, though thin, felt like it carried the weight of the entire palace. They showed that things had been changed behind everyone's backs. Official documents were edited, names removed, seals replaced, and promises broken without a word. Kate felt a chill as she closed the folder. The air around her suddenly felt heavy, and the quiet in the room seemed louder than ever. Something sacred had been disturbed. Something deep-rooted in royal tradition had been touched without permission. This wasn't really about fancy stones or golden crowns. It was about what those things meant. They stood for honor, history, and the silent promises passed down from Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana, two women whose lives had left an unshakable mark on the royal family. They had become symbols, echoes in the palace, guiding lights for those who came after them. And now Charlotte, still just a young girl, was being robbed of that legacy. She wasn't just Kate and William's only daughter. She was the one who carried both Diana's and the Queen's names. She was meant to carry their memory into the future, into a time they would never see, but had helped shape. And someone was quietly removing that future from her hands. Kate had always played her role perfectly. She smiled in public, followed every rule, and did what was expected without question. But more than being a duchess or a royal figure, she was a mother. And mothers always know when something isn't right with their child, even if that wrong is hidden behind velvet robes, closed doors, or wax seals. She began to notice other things too, changes in the royal vaults. They weren't obvious at first, nothing dramatic, but she could feel it. Some pieces were missing from displays. Some jewels no longer appeared where they were supposed to be. One tiara, which was meant to be safely stored, now had a label saying it was in use. Something important was slowly being moved or hidden, and it wasn't being done by accident. All the while, Camilla was growing more present beside King Charles, more settled in her public image. But behind the scenes, she was quietly shifting the lines. What belonged to whom was suddenly being redefined without a single public word. The world clapped for her appearances, smiled politely, but didn't know what was happening behind the palace doors. Kate didn't rush to speak. She didn't raise her voice or storm into rooms. She chose to watch, to observe, and to stay quiet. And in that quiet, the truth slowly came to her. She saw the pattern. The changes weren't random. There was a plan behind them. The folder hadn't started the problem. it had simply confirmed what was already happening. As she held that folder close and walked through the long, echoing halls of Kensington Palace, she knew this was just the start. Something much bigger was about to come to light. What Camilla had done in the shadows wouldn't stay hidden forever. The walls of the palace were going to feel that impact soon. And to fully understand why Charlotte is in the picture, you need to keep watching. Princess Charlotte's heritage. Charlotte hadn't even grown up yet, and already the world was changing her story. She was born into a life filled with rules and tradition, watched by millions, yet filled with deep meaning. From the moment her full name, Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, was shared with the world, her path had been drawn. That name wasn't just pretty. It carried weight, memory, and purpose. It tied her to two unforgettable women who shaped modern royal history. And now, before she could even wear the legacy meant for her, someone was quietly writing her out of it. Elizabeth was the longest to ever sit on the throne, and Diana was the princess who lived in the hearts of ordinary people. For Princess Charlotte, her name didn't just carry memories. It came with a deep sense of duty. Every room she walked into, that name would speak before she even said a word. She wasn't just another royal child. She was the first little girl in generations to have the same royal rights as her brothers. Her birth placed her third in line to the throne. But that position meant much more than a number. It carried emotions, centuries of royal tradition, and a legacy that had touched millions. When Charlotte was born, the entire country celebrated. Her christening, held at St. Mary Magdalene Church, the same church where Diana had once been baptized, wasn't just a lovely ceremony. It was a quiet but powerful signal to the world. Diana was still very much a part of the royal family's story. As Charlotte grew older, every moment in public was carefully planned to match royal customs. But away from the cameras inside the palace walls, a more private journey was taking shape. It was a journey written not in words or speeches, but through family treasures passed from one generation to the next. These weren't just shiny things, they were rich in meaning. Crowns that once rested on Diana's head, rings kissed with Queen Elizabeth's presence, and brooches handed out during grand events and quiet royal dinners. All these carried powerful stories. Each piece was more than just beautiful. They held strength, memory, and a reminder of royal identity. Charlotte wasn't just supposed to wear them. She was meant to live their stories and carry their messages into the future. Inside the royal vaults, these items didn't have plain tags. They had purposes. Each one was carefully picked for Charlotte. The sparkling sapphire was waiting for her. That special tiara Diana had worn so many times at important events had already been chosen for Charlotte's adult years. Even the emerald necklace that Diana had worn during a special trip to Pakistan had already been promised to Charlotte by her father, Prince William. It was a silent promise, a loving, thoughtful vow that one day his daughter would feel her grandmother close through that necklace. None of these choices were random. They were thoughtful, emotional, and full of meaning. They were like history, speaking in gold and gems. In royal life, who you are is not just about your bloodline. It's about the stories passed down through time. It's about what you're allowed to hold and what you're trusted to carry forward. For Charlotte, each of these royal heirlooms was building her identity. They weren't just things she would wear. They were shaping her spirit, her role, her future. She wasn't only preparing to one day wear a crown. She was learning to feel the weight of what it meant. She was being raised to understand the quiet strength, the invisible rules, and the powerful silence that came with being a royal. But everything began to change when King Charles became the monarch. In the background, one woman slowly started undoing what had been carefully prepared for years. While the world watched her smiling, waving, and fitting into royal life as the queen consort, something different was happening behind the scenes. She wasn't just adjusting to her new role. She was quietly changing things. Traditions that had stood strong for decades were being touched, shifted, and rewritten. Camilla was smart, careful, and always knew how to shape what people thought of her. As soon as Charles took the throne, she saw her moment. With her new position came more power than she ever had before. And with that power, she didn't just want to walk beside the king. She wanted to leave her own mark, one that went deep into the future of the royal family itself. On the surface, she looked like she was following the rules. She attended ceremonies, wore the right clothes, smiled in public, and did all the expected things. But behind closed doors, away from the flash of cameras and royal greetings, serious choices were being made, and those choices were quiet. They didn't make noise, but they were strong enough to change everything. The silent battle for Princess Charlotte's legacy. The decisions Camilla took were mostly happening where hardly anyone ever looked. And those changes, though invisible to the outside world, were slowly erasing the legacy that had been carefully planned for Charlotte. Even deep inside the royal archives, where the family's most private records and treasured history are kept, power doesn't come from grand speeches. It lives quietly in signatures. These are the files that decide who gets what, and who carries the weight of royal history forward. At first, the changes were barely noticeable. One day, a pair of earrings once linked to Princess Charlotte's name quietly disappeared from her records. Another day, a precious tiara was no longer marked for her future. It hadn't gone missing. It had simply been moved, reassigned. Not to her, not to William's family line, but to someone with no rightful place in that world. That someone was Camilla's granddaughter, Lola Parker Bowles. She wasn't born into the line of kings and queens. She had no royal title, no official duties, and no claim to the throne. Yet her name started to show up beside jewels that had once belonged to queens and princesses. These were priceless pieces, deeply tied to royal tradition and memory. They weren't gifts. They were being quietly handed over piece by piece, as if no one would notice. But someone did notice. Long-serving palace staff, those who had stood beside Diana, those who had once seen Queen Elizabeth protect the family's traditions like a sacred trust, started to whisper. Things weren't adding up. Old records didn't match new files. Things were vanishing from Charlotte's future without a word, without permission. And the most alarming part was that Kate, Charlotte's mother, hadn't been asked or even informed. Her daughter's royal path was being rewritten without her knowing. Camilla had built a strong circle around her. People who were loyal, some because they owed her, others because they didn't dare say no. She didn't need public approval. She didn't need the world to agree. She had influence, the kind of quiet power that has never spoken out loud but always felt. She used her title as queen consort to justify her moves. In her eyes, her family, though unofficial, deserved a place in the future of the crown. And the easiest place to make that happen was through inheritance, where very few ever looked too closely. This wasn't a small error or paperwork gone wrong. This was deliberate, a slow, silent shift in the royal story, hidden beneath formal events and picture-perfect smiles. If it continued, it wouldn't just change who wore what jewels, it would rewrite the very soul of what the monarchy claimed to stand for. Then came the jewels that should have never been touched, Diana's most precious and personal pieces. Every diamond carried a part of her, every sapphire told a piece of her story. And slowly, those pieces began to slip away from Charlotte's future. The first to go was the famous Spencer tiara. This was the same glowing crown Diana had worn on her wedding day, the day the world watched her step into royal history. That tiara was more than an accessory. It was a powerful symbol. It stood for a woman who brought light into a world that had tried to dim her. For years it had been safely kept, quietly waiting to be passed down to Diana's granddaughter, one who could carry her spirit forward. But without warning, it disappeared from Charlotte's records. It wasn't stolen in the usual sense. It was quietly moved under new rules and new plans, hidden behind silent approvals and polite nods. No one made an announcement. There was no public decision, just signatures and secrecy. The tiara's future had changed with the stroke of a pen, and no one dared to question the hand that signed it. And that was just the beginning. This came Queen Mary's lover's knot tiara, the one Diana had worn so many times during her life as a princess. Pictures of her wearing it had circled the globe, showing her strength, beauty, and heartbreak all at once. That tiara had stood through generations of change. It had witnessed kings rise and fall, and survived both scandals and victories. But what it could not survive was Camilla's quiet hunger for influence. Bit by bit, Diana's most treasured jewels, meant for Charlotte, were being pulled from her future and placed into the hands of someone who wasn't supposed to be part of the story. These weren't just pretty things. They were filled with love, loss, and the hope that one day Diana's legacy would live on through her granddaughter. And now, that hope was slowly being taken apart, one jewel at a time. There was once a very special jewel meant for Princess Charlotte. It had been marked as a legacy piece, something she would receive when she grew up. But that changed. All of a sudden, it was labeled differently as something available now, something anyone could wear or even give away. On paper, the change looked small, like simple office work. But behind that paperwork was something far deeper and far more troubling. Soon after, another treasured item vanished from Charlotte's inheritance list. This item was Diana's unforgettable emerald necklace. This was the same sparkling necklace she wore during an important state visit back in the 1990s. Its deep green color wasn't just beautiful, it told a story. William had once made a quiet promise. That necklace would one day belong to Charlotte. It was his way of keeping his mother close through tradition, through memories, and through love passed down in jewels. But now it was gone. People inside the palace began to whisper. The word was that Camilla had taken the necklace for herself. She believed that being queen consort gave her the right to choose what happened to the unused royal items. But those who truly understood what these jewels meant knew better. This wasn't about wearing something pretty. This was about removing someone's memory. Every time a piece meant for Charlotte was given to someone else, it was like another piece of Diana was disappearing from the royal family. For Kate, this wasn't just sad, it was painful in a quiet, sharp way. These weren't just fancy things, they were special pieces of a story, a way for Charlotte to feel connected to the grandmother she would never get to meet. And now, one by one, those little connections were being erased. Kate didn't throw a tantrum. She didn't cause a scene. But those who knew her well could see the sadness in her eyes, the slow growing fire of someone who felt deeply wronged. This wasn't just about who got which necklace. This was about a legacy being taken apart. Camilla hadn't just picked out jewelry. She had crossed lines. She had changed the direction of a story that wasn't hers to rewrite. But Kate wasn't just sad. She was quietly getting ready to fight back. And she didn't need to shout to make her move. Her way was calmer but no less powerful. While the public saw her smiling at events, looking graceful and warm on palace balconies, behind the scenes Kate was putting something far more serious together. She was gathering the truth. One file at a time, one message at a time, bit by bit. She was collecting proof. Evidence that Diana's treasured pieces were being taken away from Charlotte on purpose, and that it wasn't by accident. It was planned, and Camilla was at the center of it. What had started as a feeling in Kate's heart soon became a quiet mission. She began meeting with royal staff in secret. She asked questions, not loudly but carefully. She spoke to people who had worked with Diana, those who still remembered what the princess wanted for her family. She walked through hallways where no cameras were allowed and listened to whispers that held weight. Kate never stormed in demanding answers. Instead, she waited and listened. And when the answers finally came, they were more painful than anyone had expected. Papers had been signed without her knowledge. Records had been changed. The treasures meant for Charlotte had been quietly moved to other names without even a word of warning or respect. The woman who was supposed to protect her daughter's future had been completely left out. And the one behind it all? Camilla, quiet, calculated, and in full control. But now, Kate had something more powerful than anger. She had the truth. While Camilla acted with flair and sparkle, Kate moved with quiet strength. Her power didn't come from shouting or making scenes. It came from calm confidence and knowing exactly when to act. She had learned early on that in the royal world, real strength wasn't loud. It was patient, it was steady, and it was smart. Her way of fighting back wasn't wild or angry. It was planned and precise. The more she found out, the clearer it became. This wasn't some harmless mistake. This was all intentional, and Kate wasn't going to sit by and do nothing. To everyone else, Kate looked like the perfect royal, smiling, kind, graceful. But behind her polite smile was a quiet storm. She was getting ready, not for drama, but for justice. Camilla had hidden behind silence, thinking nobody would notice. But Kate knew something important. Real leadership doesn't have to raise its voice. It just has to be right. Every record Kate found, every detail she confirmed, wasn't just to fix what had been taken. It was her way of making a statement that a family story shouldn't be rewritten. That legacy isn't something to be stolen or changed. Camilla tried to gain control by clinging to power and position. But Kate was driven by something deeper, purpose. She didn't need a title to do what was right. She just needed the truth. And once she had it, there was no going back. Then the day finally came. It was the moment everything changed. A private meeting, a simple room, one folder, and a truth so powerful it shook the entire royal household. There were no cameras, no speeches, no reporters. Just Kate and Camilla face to face inside Kensington Palace. Camilla arrived expecting a calm chat, maybe even some understanding. But what she walked into was something she hadn't prepared for, a moment of truth. Kate stood still, composed as ever, holding the folder that held months of research and quiet discovery. Inside were emails, records, old files, and names. Everything clearly showing what had really happened. This wasn't gossip. It was solid proof. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. The truth didn't need drama because it spoke for itself. As Kate began laying out the papers, Camilla's look slowly changed. First came denial, stiff, practiced words trying to brush things off. She called it a mix-up. She blamed confusion in the paperwork. But Kate didn't stop. She continued page by page, showing how Charlotte's inheritance had been quietly removed, how important items meant for Diana's granddaughter were secretly redirected to Camilla's own family, how every step was planned, signed off, and covered up. Camilla had no more places to hide. The silence in that room became heavy. Camilla, who was usually so sure of herself, began to stumble over her words. She blamed her staff. She said the records were old and also insisted it wasn't personal. But Kate wasn't there for excuses. She came for the truth. And with a calm but firm voice, she reminded Camilla this wasn't just about pretty jewelry. It was about memories. It was about honoring someone who couldn't speak for herself. It was about doing what was right for a little girl who didn't even know what was being taken from her. Kate didn't speak for herself. She stood up for Charlotte, too young to understand any of this. She also stood up for Diana, whose spirit lived in every gem, every heirloom, every memory. And most of all, she stood for what the royal family should be. Not polished perfection, but honest and strong. Camilla had crossed a line. And Kate was the only one brave enough to stop her. What followed wasn't a fight. It was the truth landing exactly where it needed to. Camilla didn't shout back. She backed off quietly. The truth had done its job. Kate didn't smirk. She didn't linger. She just picked up her folder, gave a simple nod, and walked out, leaving behind a silence that said more than any words could. Camilla withdrew into the background, while Kate stepped forward into the light, wearing around her neck the very necklace Camilla had once tried to take. Kate didn't make a speech. She didn't explain because she didn't see a need to. The necklace certainly said everything. 10 days after that powerful meeting, Kate reappeared in public. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with grace. Around her neck was the emerald, a symbol of love, strength, and truth. Without saying a word, she reminded the world of what mattered most. And that quiet, shining message traveled far beyond the palace gates. At a well-attended charity event held inside the elegant walls of St. James's Palace, Kate stepped into the room with quiet boldness. Around her neck, resting with meaning, was the emerald necklace once belonging to Princess Diana. The same treasured piece Camilla had once tried to take, hide behind official papers, and claim with soft-spoken plans and signatures passed in secret. But now that very necklace, long tied to Diana's memory, sat proudly on Kate's chest, just below her calm and unwavering gaze. It didn't shine with power or royal glory. It sparkled with quiet strength and unspoken defiance. The reaction was instant. Photographers captured every angle. The press exploded. In minutes, news outlets around the world ran headlines. But this moment wasn't just about fashion. Something deeper had happened. The phrase, "Justice for Charlotte," shot across social media, not just as a popular hashtag, but as a wave of emotion and support. That necklace was no longer just a family jewel. It had become a message, a symbol. It was Diana's spirit brought back into the spotlight by the one woman who had stood by it all along. She didn't need to speak. The necklace said everything. It sent a powerful message to royal followers everywhere, to people still mourning Diana, and to mothers who knew the silent strength it took to protect what mattered most. It made one thing crystal clear. Diana's story hadn't been erased. It had been honored, defended, and finally made right. News outlets couldn't stop talking. Writers analyzed the details, and royal commentators praised Kate's calm grace. As the historians, they didn't hold foul because they called this one of the most meaningful and unforgettable acts in recent royal history. This wasn't about elegance or beauty anymore. It was a statement, and it was loud enough to shake the world. Camilla had tried to quietly erase Charlotte's place in the royal legacy. But with one simple public appearance, Kate had put her daughter's name right back where it belonged. Every time the emeralds caught the light, they reminded everyone that something had gone wrong, and that Kate had stepped up to make it right again. The public, who had slowly started to warm up to Camilla over the years, suddenly turned cold. The image she had spent so long building of grace, patience, and acceptance began to fall apart. No carefully written palace message could undo the damage caused by that one powerful moment. Camilla's name became tied to selfishness, overstepping boundaries, and reaching too far for something that wasn't hers to take. On the other hand, Kate was no longer just seen as the elegant wife of the future king. That night changed her. She became a strong woman who stood up without raising her voice, quiet guardian of legacy, and a shining example of leadership. She had never needed a spotlight to earn respect, but now she had earned something deeper. She became the kind of woman people looked up to, not because of her crown, but because of her character. Her decision to wear that necklace wasn't just about memory. It was about honor, about not giving in when something sacred was under threat. She reminded everyone that some moments, some promises, and some people should never be forgotten or pushed aside. It was a powerful win, dressed in calm elegance, a message delivered with silent courage, not with loud words. And while the public celebrated Kate and held her high for what she had done, something else began to stir behind the palace doors. An internal shift in the royal family. The outside world saw a moment of strength, but inside the royal household, another kind of tension was rising. A new storm was beginning to form. Inside the palace, things were no longer the same. The tension was heavy, and loyalties were beginning to fall apart. Protecting Charles was caught in the middle of a heartbreaking decision between the woman he had loved and defended for years, and the young woman the world now saw as the future of the monarchy. The storm outside had quieted, but within the royal walls, it was quieter than ever before. Too quiet. Charles, who had spent a lifetime learning how to stay calm and make careful choices, now stood face to face with a family crisis he hadn't seen coming. He had spent many years protecting Camilla, standing by her through bad press, criticism, and public anger. He worked hard to make people accept her, shaping her image until she finally stood beside him as queen. But now, all of that effort was slipping away fast. This time the problem wasn't coming from reporters or the press. It was coming from inside his own family. It was coming from Kate, the woman married to his son, the woman who had won hearts across the globe without saying a word. Even closed doors, the shift in atmosphere was clear. Smiles seemed forced, meetings were shorter, and staff schedules suddenly became more calculated. People who worked in the palace started choosing sides quietly. Some still stood with Camilla, holding on to old duties and traditions. But others, slowly but noticeably, began turning toward Kate. Because while Camilla may have had the title, Kate had something stronger, the public's heart. She wasn't just a royal figure anymore. She had become a quiet protector of history and truth. And in a place where history means everything, that gave her incredible influence. King Charles was torn. He cared deeply for Camilla. That was no secret. But he also couldn't ignore the damage this moment had caused. He watched as newspapers and commentators praised Kate endlessly. Even people who once doubted the monarchy were now admiring her actions. He noticed how Prince William stood by, eyes filled with both quiet anger and immense pride. Charles understood the meaning behind that emerald necklace. He knew the emotional and historical weight it carried. He knew what it took for Kate to return it to Charlotte. And now, everything he had worked for, the image of a united royal family, was falling apart. Camilla, who once walked into events with power and confidence, started stepping back. She began skipping appearances. Her speeches were shorter. She stopped standing beside the king as often. In private, she was no longer her usual self. People whispered that she was having sleepless nights. She wasn't losing her crown, but something more painful. Her place in the royal story. Not because of scandal or shame, but because she was slowly fading from the spotlight. Kate didn't ask for any of this attention or respect, but it came anyway. She didn't demand a position of power, but people naturally started listening when she spoke. Her name on invitations made them more important. She had earned trust, not through power, but through grace and purpose. And now, everyone inside the palace could feel the change. There was a new kind of balance forming, one that wasn't based on titles or bloodlines, but on truth and values. At the center of all this was a little girl, Princess Charlotte. She didn't know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. She was still just a child, full of innocence, with a sweet smile and beautiful manners. But to those who knew the royal family well, Charlotte was already carrying something much bigger. She had become a symbol and a link between two powerful women who had changed the monarchy in their own ways. Born into a life of rules, traditions, and cameras, Charlotte was never going to have a normal childhood. But somehow, her parents were doing everything they could to give her something close to it. They filled her days with laughter, learning, and bedtime stories. William and Kate made sure she had room to grow up as a child first, before stepping into her royal future. Even as she played in the garden or sat reading with her brothers, the weight of her name was always quietly following her. Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. 3 names that each told a story. Elizabeth, strong and steady, who led with tradition. Diana, bold and kind, who changed the royal world with her heart. And now Charlotte, the girl meant to carry the best parts of both. That name was never random. It was a promise, a way to honor the women who shaped the royal world before her. But when that promise was nearly broken, when Diana's memory was almost taken away from her, Kate didn't raise her voice or make a scene. She didn't just tell Charlotte about Diana. She made sure her daughter would feel her, connect with her, and carry her spirit proudly. By returning the necklace and protecting every record, these weren't just actions. They were Kate's way of drawing a clear line in history. She was silently promising that Charlotte would never grow up feeling like Diana was just a name in a book. No, she would know her. Through stories, through treasures, through love. Kate wasn't just preserving royal traditions. She was holding onto a bond that could never be measured by jewels or status, only by heart. This whole situation, despite all the dramatic headlines, was never truly about crowns or tiaras. It was about something deeper. It was about knowing who you are, where you come from, and who you're meant to become. Charlotte will grow up, and the world will be watching her every step. But now, thanks to her mother, she will face it all with quiet confidence. She will carry Diana's fire and Queen Elizabeth's wisdom, not as heavy responsibilities, but as gifts. Beautiful, powerful gifts. One day, Charlotte will wear more than elegant clothes or royal gems. She will carry memories, strength, and the quiet power of the woman who fought to protect her future. Because in the royal family, there are stories that must never be lost, and mothers who will do everything to keep them alive. Speaking of stories that must never be lost, do you know that Charlotte once got Camilla angry by just putting on Diana's tiara? Well, if this is your first time hearing it, stay glued to your screen as we unveil what happened. The royal tension. There's been a lot of quiet chatter inside the palace about a very special crown meant for Princess Charlotte. This crown isn't just any royal piece. It's the same sparkling tiara that Princess Diana wore on her wedding day. No one expected it would be passed down to her granddaughter Charlotte, which feels like a loving family tradition. But not everyone is happy about it. Behind the scenes, Queen Camilla is said to be unhappy with the plan. Unlike the royal jewels kept in the royal vault, this particular tiara doesn't belong to the crown. It's part of the Spencer family's private collection and has been passed from one family member to another for many years. Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, reportedly wants Charlotte to have it when she grows up, and that's no surprise. After all, she's the first granddaughter of Princess Diana. Charlotte, even though she's still very young, already feels a deep connection to the grandmother she never met. She's seen pictures of Princess Diana wearing the tiara, and it fills her with joy to think she might one day wear it too. Just like many little girls, Charlotte enjoys playing dress-up with her toy crowns. But this one is different. It holds real meaning. It's a treasure that connects her to someone who means so much to her family. But while Charlotte's family seems to see this as a touching and sweet gesture, Camilla doesn't share the same feeling. Some people close to the royals say Camilla believes the tiara should remain with the Spencer family and not be handed to Charlotte, at least not yet. Others think there's more behind her disapproval. The old and painful history between Diana, Camilla, and King Charles still lingers, and anything tied to Diana often brings up sensitive emotions. What has shocked people even more is how Camilla herself has worn some of Diana's jewelry over the years, jewelry that once belonged to the late princess. This has upset many as they wonder why Camilla can wear Diana's pieces so openly, but a young girl like Charlotte receiving her grandmother's tiara seems to cause such a fuss. The truth is, this tiara isn't just a beautiful object. It's a symbol of Diana's lasting memory and the love her family still holds for her. Right now, Charlotte might be too young to understand the weight of it all, but as she gets older, she will likely come to see that this gift carries more than sparkle. It carries a legacy. And when that time comes, she may have to face the same emotions, the same questions, and the same royal whispers that continue to echo through her family's past. Diana's effects on the royal family. Over the years, Princess Diana's memory has remained strong. And even today, her legacy still stirs strong emotions, especially when Queen Camilla is involved. In January 2022, Camilla made a decision that left many royal fans upset. She took one of Diana's most famous pieces of jewelry, an emerald and diamond necklace, and changed it into a brooch. This necklace wasn't just any accessory. It was originally a gift from the Queen Mother to Diana, and became one of her most iconic looks, especially when she wore it as a choker during her trip to Australia. To many people, Camilla's decision to change this necklace felt like more than just a fashion choice. Given her complicated history with Diana, the move came across as a personal message. Royal supporters quickly spoke out, saying it was inappropriate. But this wasn't just about a piece of jewelry. It was about what the necklace meant. It reminded everyone of a painful past, one shaped by Charles and Camilla's affair, which began while Charles was still married to Diana. That part of their story wasn't just gossip. It deeply impacted how people saw the royal family for years. Even now, with Diana no longer alive and Camilla officially holding the title of queen, people still can't help but compare them. So, when Camilla was seen wearing and altering Diana's treasured necklace, it felt like history was being repeated in a hurtful way. Jewelry expert Maxwell Stone explained that while it's normal for royal jewelry to be passed down, this particular piece held powerful emotions. Fans didn't just question why Camilla wore it, they wondered why she chose that moment to bring it out. Online, people debated whether she was trying to send a message, or if it was simply a poor decision. The truth is, Diana and Camilla never had a warm relationship. There was no real trust between them. When Diana first met Camilla, she didn't know that Camilla had been involved with Charles in the past. In fact, royal writer Penny Junor shared that Diana only found out the truth after she had already said yes to marrying Charles. That realization was painful. The woman who had seemed friendly turned out to be someone who had a romantic history with her future husband and was still close to him. One moment that really opened Diana's eyes was a lunch that Camilla arranged. Charles wasn't around, so Camilla invited Diana out. At first, it seemed like a friendly gesture, but during the conversation, Camilla kept bringing up hunting, asking if Diana would join Charles for those outings after they got married. Diana wasn't interested in hunting, so she politely said no. That's when she noticed Camilla's reaction. She looked relieved, and that small reaction told Diana everything. This wasn't just small talk. Camilla was trying to figure her out, maybe even sizing her up. Later on, Diana spoke openly about how Camilla always seemed to be around in her marriage, and she wasn't wrong. When asked if Camilla played a part in the downfall of her relationship, Diana didn't hesitate. She admitted that her marriage felt too crowded, like there were 3 people in it instead of 2. All of this heartbreak didn't just affect Diana. It changed how people saw the royal family forever. And that's why Diana's story still matters. That's why her name still carries weight, and her memory still sparks such strong reactions. Because what she went through left deep marks, not just in history, but in the hearts of people who loved her. So what do you think about this quick royal drama? Do you think Kate did the right thing by preserving Diana's legacy? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.